How is everybody? Oh, it's a little bit cold here today. I took the dogs out this morning and it was so cold. So I wanted to get them out nice and early. It was so cold that my hands were aching. Oh boy. They were like painful. That's how bad it was. Which is really unusual for where I live. I live in a subtropical climate, so it shouldn't be that cold, but I like it. Anyway, let's get going. If you've got any questions, write them in the chat now so I can get to them. But I'm just going to start with some of the ones that came through prior. And that is starting with Jackie. So Jackie has a 5-year-old Bichon, ex-stud dog. 18 months she's had him, so he's obviously been a stud dog for a little while. She works from home. Oh, I work at home, yes. So she's with him a lot, obviously. She says he's very attached to me, not so much her husband. He follows me everywhere. I can go into the garden and he's okay on his own in the house if he knows I'm about. But when she goes out, he gets anxious and tells me off when I come back. I've managed 2 by 15-minute trips out in 18 months. She even takes him to the hairdressers and he won't stay with her husband. He paces and cries. Okay, so firstly, ex-stud dogs, I've worked with a couple actually, and they do seem to struggle with moving into a home where they're suddenly, their life's turned upside down. They've lived in this particular environment for such a long time, and then they go into this new environment and everything's strange. They don't have other doggy companions. You don't mention if you've got another dog. I'm assuming you don't. Um, and it's hard for them. And so he's obviously bonded with you. You're around a lot more, Jackie. Um, Sounds like he may be a little bit hyper attached to you, especially if he doesn't like to stay with your husband. Hyper attachment's a bit trickier to resolve than just normal separation anxiety, unfortunately. But what we try to do is get the dog to bond with more people in their lives. So he's more comfortable when you go out and hubby's looking after him, that he can actually be comfortable with your husband, so that he can rely on other people and not just you. How we do that is to get hubby more and other people, not just hubby, but if you can, get more people involved in his life. That might involve hubby taking him for, obviously it depends on your husband's capacity to do this with his own work and whatnot. But yeah, we try to get hubby more involved. So it could be walk, because what I find, especially with my husband, I'm at home all day with my dogs, or in general, and he comes home, he might give them a cuddle for 5 minutes, but then he just wants to tune out. And so they love him, but I'm still the significant person. And that sounds very much like your case as well. So what we want to do is we get hubby more involved in his life. So that could include hubby taking him for walks, hubby doing some training with him or playing with him or treating him or feeding him. Even if you make the food up, hubby could still actually literally give him the food. But just being more present in your dog's life will help. So that when you do go out, it just gives you a bit more freedom knowing that your dog's not stressed. You do mention that he's okay in the garden when he knows you're there, and that is often the case. So you can go out and do the weeding or the whatever it is, lawn mowing, or go and check the mailbox or go and pick up the rubbish, but they know you're there. It's not a real absence. So that's a big factor. So yeah, I don't really count that as an absence. So my first thought for you would be to get your dog more bonded with other people. And so when I say other people, like I said, it's, starting with your husband would be a really good place to begin. However, I think also if you can get more people involved, so maybe get a pet sitter in every now and then or a dog walker, just to go so your dog has fun with other people and not just you. So he's not so, oh, I need you, I need you, I need you. We want him to be able to be comfortable with other people. Then you can actually start working on the separation anxiety. Also, if he won't stay with your husband, he paces and cries. If you need to go out, can your husband take him out for a walk? Then you go out while they're gone. And then when they come back, yes, he'll know that you're not there, but he's just had some fun with your husband. So that's again building the bond. He hasn't had to watch you leave, which is quite tricky, I think, for dogs with separation anxiety, especially if you're the significant person watching you actually leave. So yeah, don't go out till they've gone out. And of course, this is going to depend on your husband's ability to take him for a walk. But yeah, so hubby goes out, you go out, they come back, and hopefully he won't be as invested in you leaving. He's not watching you leave as well, but hubby needs to be more involved if that is possible. If not, I'd be trying to enlist someone else to be more involved. So that's where I would start with that, Jackie. So I'm just going to pop over here, make sure there's any questions, just write them out and I'll get to them. Now we've got Alison. This is quite a long one. I've got a couple of long ones. So Alison, she's got a 15-month-old cockapoo, which we rehomed at 11 months. Okay, of age. Okay, so you've only had him a few months, really, 4 months by the looks. We quickly realized after 2 weeks of no sleep that he had separation anxiety. As a result of this, he now sleeps with us. Well, on that point, dogs are social sleepers. We know they're social animals. They're also social sleepers. I don't mind if dogs sleep in the room with you. I don't think it has an impact on separation anxiety. I don't care if they sleep on the bed with you. Lots of dogs with separation anxiety do sleep on the bed or in the bedroom, and lots of dogs without separation anxiety do sleep in the bedroom and or on the bed or what have you. So there's not really any correlation. And as I said, dogs are social sleepers. Okay. My husband works from home, so we are both home all day. Okay. That's, yeah, I mean, they don't learn to be by themselves. And remembering that he's come into your home, 4 months isn't that long. We have a camera we put on when he goes out, and he howls, paces up and down, barks, scratches at the door. If he can see out the window, he will sit quietly for a while looking out the window and then start pacing and howling again. Yeah, okay. We have noticed that he's generally a bit quieter and settled when we have our daughter's dog while she's away. We actually spotted him on camera asleep on the settee next to our daughter's dog. Well, that's positive, while we were out, but this was also interspersed with howling and pacing. He's also lead reactive and can escalate from 0 to 10 in terms of reactivity in seconds, and in a new environment behaves like a sniper. We've started taking him to the local beach in an attempt to socialize him. In terms of the reactivity, honestly, I think things like that require an in-person trainer. I would actually be trying to find somebody in your area that understands reactivity, and getting them to work with you in terms of socializing him with other dogs. Because I'm not sure how long you've been following me, but I talk about thresholds a lot for separation anxiety, but also dogs with reactivity have got thresholds. So it could be that you're flooding him going to the beach as opposed to helping him learn that it's okay to be with other dogs. You say the beach generally has many off-leash dogs. He quickly behaves like he's vicious, lunging and barking. We keep him on a long lead on the beach. They have found if we let him meet and sniff other dogs with the owner's permission, he immediately becomes playful and friendly. So the reactivity perhaps sounds like, I mean, this is off topic, obviously, but so I'm not going to dwell on this bit because this is really for people with separation anxiety, the dog and the person, no, the dog. But the reactivity sounds more like leash frustration. I would encourage you to jump on my website, which is decodingyourcanine.com. So I've got a couple of different websites. I do have a summit on there that is specifically about aggression and reactivity. And there's at least 15 speakers. There might be more. I can't remember off the top of my head. I ran it in April. And I think you'll find that might be helpful. Just listening to some of the speakers talking about reactivity and leash frustration sounds a little bit like leash frustration. He is an absolutely beautiful dog, extremely clever and doing very well with general training. He's very responsive and is very switched on, food motivated. But recently we've tried a dog whistle for recall and we've found that he absolutely loves the whistle. Oh, that's good. And responds immediately. In the house while we are at home, he is well behaved and calm, but follows me everywhere. Recently, he has occasionally started to stay or sleep in another room while I'm in a different room as long as I don't shut the door. Okay, so I'd be curious to know if he's just got separation anxiety or generalized anxiety. That would be interesting because slightly different remedies. So you're both at home a lot. So basically, I would be looking at doing some training, just some desensitization, knowing what his threshold is, like how soon it is before he starts reacting, and then doing some training around that. Remember, it's only been 4 months. And when you do start doing separation anxiety desensitization, as you mentioned, because he's kind of building confidence with you now. So like I said, it's only been 4 months and he's finally able to take himself off into another room. And with this training, that is actually a really nice flow-on effect that the dog gains independence in the home. I don't like forcing independence in the home. I don't like shutting a dog in a room and shutting the door on them and right, you have to learn to stay in there. I'm not keen on that because it can actually make the dog more clingy. So I would rather do it in a way where the dog is feeling comfortable and safe with being by themselves in that environment, but doing it in a way that they're not stressing out. So, and I also don't mind that a dog follows a person around the house. That's fine as well. That's what dogs do. If I got up now, they'd all be on my tail. Where are you going? So that's just a normal doggy behavior. People say, oh, they can't leave me alone. But I think if they're confident, they can. They don't need to be with you that much. But if they're feeling a little bit unsure, and again, 4 months isn't that long, if they're feeling a little bit unsure about their environment, then they probably do need to be with us. So don't worry about that. The issue for you is actually getting outside the door. If he has generalized anxiety, it might be worth talking to a vet. It could be a kindness, just to see if there's some medical help they can give. May not be forever. It could just be that he's in a new home and he's a little bit unsettled. But if it's just separation anxiety, then I would be looking at doing some training around that, some desensitization training. And you might find you do it separately with your husband and then do a session together, but you might find that he's more attached to one of you than the other, and he does better with one of you than the other. So that will depend. But it starts with knowing what the dog's threshold is and then moving on from there, keeping the training under that threshold and then just gradually increasing the time in such small increments that the dog doesn't notice. So hopefully that answers your question. I'll just pop over here. If anybody's got any questions, let me know. All right, now Fabian has got a very long one, but that's good. She's got a mini dachshund. Hope I'm saying your name right too. 7 months old, so it's just a baby, and it's only been with us since the end of March. So just hitting its teens now. It's gone through the teething. I'm assuming its teeth have all come through, or maybe not all of them, but just about. So keep that in mind. Pain can play a part in the dog's ability to be by themselves. Whether that's arthritic, allergies, gastro, pain in general, it can make them a little bit more needy, so to speak, which makes sense because if you think of a child that's feeling sick, they want their mum. So she says, I definitely spend the most time with him. Okay. He has always been anxious when left alone in the room. I have tried so many things. He is too attached to me. I can't even leave the room while my husband is with him. He just cries. Okay, so that sounds like, I think it was Jackie at the beginning, a little bit of hyper attachment there as well, to you. When I leave the house, he knows I am gone, and he knows I am gone. He is okay, but I can't even go to the shower or anything without him freaking out. He was amazing in his crate though, but for 2 weeks now, he freaks out in the crate every time, and then maybe 2 to 3 times a week. He's always crated for naps and overnight sleep, and when I'm gone. I have set up a routine. He's crated when alone, but I'm also when I'm in the living room with him, he's reactive and barks. anxious at everything but doesn't bite or attack. Okay, so if he has got generalized anxiety, if he has, and that's not necessarily reactivity. So generalized anxiety could be more, I don't know, you're walking down the street, a twig falls out of the tree and they just freak out and can't recover. So not necessarily about reactivity. That's more for me a training issue. I mean, it can be reactivity can be partly an anxious thing, obviously, but sometimes it's more a training issue as opposed to I have got generalized anxiety. So I don't always bracket reactivity in with generalized anxiety, if that makes sense. Going places is really hard because I know how stressed he is, but we have been exposing him since day one. I just see how stressed and anxious he is, and I just want him to be happy. Okay. So just kind of circling back to what I was saying before about I don't force independence in the home. Yeah, give him the option to go into a crate, and of course at that age you probably don't want to leave him out. But as he gets a little bit older, you might find you don't need that crate as much. And in some countries, I think I've mentioned this before, you can't crate a dog. It's illegal unless there's a medical reason. So maybe a pen or something. But anyway, again, I don't care if he's following you around the house. That's fine. It's what happens when you leave. She says, is there any chance you can talk about separation anxiety that doesn't happen all the time, just phases? Okay, and then she finishes off, my puppy freaks out when left alone, when I go to the shower, go to the kitchen, leave the house. He definitely does it more with me than my husband. So we've kind of touched on all this stuff already, but he also doesn't do it all the time, which is confusing, totally. Some days he is absolutely fine. Some days he freaks out. We have the same routine for leaving every time. Okay. Remembering he's a teenager, well, he's just hit his teens. Hormones can play a part, teething. So I don't know how long that, is he having, I don't know where he is with his teeth, but if he's having an episode where it's really painful and you leave him, and that might be one of the times that he has that freak out simply because he's in pain and he just doesn't want to be by himself. Again, I don't care if he follows you to the shower or the kitchen. That's what dogs do. It's totally normal. And I think I feel like I need to normalize this. Dogs follow us where we go. Maybe my older dog, she's 11 now. She's not as invested, but even then, she'll come looking for me at some point if I'm not around. So that's just what dogs do. I'm going to normalize that now. I think I'm going to write myself a note and say, hey, do we normalize following? Because I think it's worthwhile. I have to write an article for Happy Healthy Dog. So I might actually write about that because people talk about that all the time. Well, they follow me to the kitchen, they follow me to the bathroom. Totally normal. They're dogs. They just want to know. They're social creatures. So don't worry about that. It's what happens when you leave. That's the most important thing. The reason it's fluctuating, I cannot pinpoint that. It could be any number of reasons why he does or doesn't have a freak out. Hormones are going to play a role because he's just becoming a teenager. And you're going to see a lot of that fluctuation, teenage dogs. How long has he been with you? Oh, yeah, he's been with you for quite some time. So it could be those days that he has the freak out that he's had less exercise or mental enrichment, mental challenge. I've had a lot of clients where the days that the client didn't do any exercise or didn't do something with the dog and tried to do the training, it flopped because the dog's just not in that state of mind when they're ready to rest and relax. When I start a client out, we start with foundations. We worry about complications down the track. So what that means is that very first plan that we're working on when we're building up the time, we start with the plan that is the easiest for the dog. So we set the dog up for success. We set the dog up so we can build solid foundations and consolidate those solid foundations. And what that looks like is they have had a walk, they've had some mental stimulation, they're not expecting food, they're not expecting a walk, they're not expecting play, they're not expecting someone to come home. It's not Zoomy time. often that switching hour in the evening, afternoon, evening. We're not, we know there's no kids coming home from school hours, that's going to disturb the training. We just set it up so that the dog is in a place where they're ready to rest and relax. And that is the foundational plan. Then we make it harder down the track where we might do it when they haven't had exercise, for example. So I don't know your situation in terms of when he was freaking out, as you say, when he was alone. Had he had exercise? Had he had mental enrichment? Was he in pain? Was it hormones kind of flying around? You mentioned he's more attached to you than hubby. That's probably no doubt because you're the primary caregiver. And you could, I imagine, quite easily help build the bond with your hubby by involving him more with doing all that primary caregiving stuff. So walking, treating, training, playing, etc., etc. So hopefully that answers your question. I can't for sure pinpoint why he's freaking out sometimes and not others. We don't really want him to freak out at all, obviously, but it could be an age thing. It could be, it's hard to answer that question not knowing if he's had exercise or enrichment that day as well. So hopefully that does help. Fabian, his teeth are still growing out. Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize you were there. I'm finally able to join. The link wasn't working. Oh, that's terrible. Not sure if you got to yeah, I'm just answering it now. Yes, we always exercise him and make sure his needs are met. Cool. That's why I'm so confused. Yeah, like I said, it's hard to know. It could be the teeth excessively chewing lately. Yeah, pain, like I said, pain is going to play a factor. Yeah. All right. So yes, hopefully that helps anyway. So if you've got anything else. Oh, I wonder why people can't join. Oh, I am not able to join urgent appointment with hubby. Oh, okay. Oh, all right. All right, so next question then. Pat says, I want to know if barking and not allowing strangers to come into our house is also part of separation anxiety. My dog just keeps barking and won't settle when someone comes in. I wouldn't probably put that under the separation anxiety bracket. I would probably say you need to get an in-person trainer for that. Definitely do some desensitization and in this case, counter conditioning as well. So, but I would be tackling it completely different. It could be based in generalized anxiety or some level of anxiety, but I wouldn't say it's separation related, if that makes sense. So I would get an in-person trainer to work with that problem. Shannon says, I have a dog in our shelter currently that has bad separation anxiety from people. He does not do well in the kennel, even if he has access to the outside yard. Bring him inside where the workers are and he settles down. He was an owner surrender because he couldn't leave home by himself. He destroyed his house and would destroy a kennel. He's a golden retriever husky, 2 years. Oh, that's such a tricky one, Shannon, because generally dogs don't generalize well, which means that what they learn in one place isn't necessarily going to transfer to a new situation. So that's why I say board and trains aren't really recommended for dogs with separation anxiety because you're sending them away somewhere else and then they're not in situ. What they learn there doesn't necessarily translate to the in-home environment. So he's 2 years old, so he's still young, still kind of probably in his teens, at the higher end of the teens, but that's going to be playing a factor. Oh, it's a tricky one because, I mean, you could do some work with him, but I'm just not sure when he goes to a new home if that's going to be of benefit. What you could do, though, Shannon, is try to do some work with him. And then when the new owner adopts, they carry on that work. So they restart the situation, if you know what I mean. But if he's in a shelter, I don't know because I mean, he's by himself at night. So generally what we say with separation anxiety is don't leave the dog alone. The only time they're alone is when they're having a safe absence. But it seems to me that this dog is going to struggle with that because he's in a shelter environment. Of course, he's going to be alone. I'm assuming it's skeleton staff at night. If someone in your shelter program had the capacity to foster him and do some work with him in a home environment, and then when he goes to his new home, he's had a bit of training by under his belt, and then the new owner carries on that training. But that is a bit of a tricky one, I have to admit. But yeah, feel free to reach out to me on that one, because yeah, that would be my concern. How do you do the training in a shelter when the dog's still going to be by themselves at, overnight or at some point? And what does he do anyway at the shelter when he's by himself? He definitely sounds like he needs a person with him. I hope he's not going to be hard to adopt out if he's going to be, because a new owner has to be prepared for this. They either have to be prepared to do the work or be able to find cover for him when they're not around. So that's it's going to be tricky. All right, let me just check the comments again. Fabian says, definitely a crazy teenager at the moment, being neutered Friday. I hope that will help. How old is he again? That seems a bit young for neutering. I would encourage you to do your own research. Don't take my word for it. But I would encourage you to so I don't really say to de-sex until the dog is at 18 months old, because they need their hormones to help with their growth, their skeletal system. And with a smaller dog, I think, yeah, you can neuter younger, but I think certainly with a bigger dog, it's best not to do it till they're about 18 months to 2 years old. I know a lot of people say, oh, it helps with aggression. That isn't the case at all. It does not help them. That's just kind of a bit of an old wives' tale, actually, and it can actually have the reverse effect. So I don't know, do some research, maybe get on to Dr. Karen Becker and see, she's done some videos on early desexing and the impact it has on the dog, their skeletal system, their growth plates and all that sort of thing. So just do some research. Like I said, don't take my word for it, but I would definitely be looking into that a bit more. His humping has gotten worse and he bites a lot when humping. Yeah. But I'm sure you could probably do some redirection with the humping. Yeah, look, I don't want to put pressure on you or say the wrong thing. Just do some research first before you definitely do it. Okay. Debbie says, my dog has SA, but I hardly go out. But I had a chance of a holiday when I found someone who he went to in her home. She had him for a day, then brought him home. Then we tried overnight. Right, great. They were both happy, so he stays there on and off. That's fantastic. It's really good when you find people like that. He loves it. She has other dogs staying too. So you say her name and he is at the door. Oh, you say her name and he's at the door, thinking she's there. Oh, that's nice. She also takes photos of the dog, so you're not worried. That's good. It was the making of him as I got a dog walker who picks him up at home and takes him with other dogs to a field for exercise. It just gives me some time on my own. That's 3 times a week. He is with me. He won't leave me alone, as when I move, he follows. Yeah. So Debbie, thank you for sharing that. I'm just going to have a sip of water, croaky. It's amazing when you find people like that. I had a client, and she found a senior couple who had always had a connection with dogs, but they'd moved into a unit and they weren't allowed to have a dog. And plus they just, they were at that age where they didn't want another dog, but they connected with her. I think she met them out on a walk of all places. So she was walking the dog and they made a fuss and they just connected with each other, and they would babysit for her. And the dog loved them. They loved the dog. It was just a win-win all round. And so it's really fantastic when you can find people like that. So, and in that case, I don't think she was even paying them. I can't actually remember, but sometimes you can just find that magic person and it works just for everybody. So that's fantastic. Caress. Hopefully that's right. This is the last question. So if anybody's got any, please write them in the chat. I'm just going to do this one first and I'll come back and look at the chat. Caress has a 16-week-old puppy, so it's just a baby. I've noticed something reoccurring in his separation training. I've intentionally been doing his separation training around his day naps. Generally, he's confined to an X-pen with his crate, but sometimes I will practice having him confined in his crate only. He is awake when I depart and knows I leave. I stay nearby and watch him on camera. He will fall asleep shortly after I leave. The issue is when he naturally wakes up. Yeah, this is tricky, this one. He will see no one is there and start pacing. He's pacing, pouring at the crate or pouring at his X-pen. It usually progresses to whining and then barking. How can I start adding duration to his training if he isn't able to calm himself after he wakes up? That's a really good question. So he's just a baby. How do I answer this properly? So the problem is he's falling asleep and then waking up and panicking, as you've obviously identified. Normally, I would say if it's generally his nap time and he's feeling sleepy, it's awesome time to train. And the fact that he is able to fall asleep is brilliant. It means he was relaxed enough to fall asleep. So that is a good outcome. The problem is when he wakes up. So I would suggest part of that is less anxiety and more sort of frustration. Like, where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Not as in, oh my God, I'm by myself. I'm by myself. If that makes sense. I don't know if it does, but I'm probably not explaining that bit very well. Yeah, so I think I would maybe try to train a little bit earlier. And I say this really hesitantly because we don't want him to be full of it, but we don't want him. I like the fact that he falls asleep. It's what happens when you wake up, when he wakes up. That's the problem. So there's different ways of tackling this, but what you could do is, okay, you're going out, he's asleep, and then come back in while he's still asleep. And just keep pushing that time up. So don't wait till he wakes up because you've kind of missed that window of, wow, that is the picture I love. I'm going to come back in. As a puppy, I mean, I don't know how long he sleeps for. Are we talking, you don't mention how long you leave him, but I would be looking more at trying to come back in while he's still relaxed. Even if I mean, I don't know where your camera is, how well you can see him, but maybe if you saw him stir but didn't get up, come back in. The fact that he's waking up and then panicking, we'll call it panic, yeah, is probably means he's being pushed too far and he's going over threshold. So I would prefer, even if it feels like you're not making progress, I bet you would. So as soon as you sort of see him naturally wake up and start to stir, come back in. I talk about capturing in my book, actually, as in sometimes, yeah, we want to build, the object is we want to build the time. We want it to get higher and higher and higher in terms of how long they're by themselves. However, sometimes when we're watching on a camera, we see this beautiful picture of the dog either asleep or lying down and they're completely relaxed. And those moments when we think, that is amazing, I want my dog to look like this all the time, rather than going, well, no, I have to stay outside because my time is 30 minutes. Go, I'm just going to capture that moment and encourage that moment. So for your little puppy, remembering he's just a baby anyway, so you probably don't want to leave him too long. If you see him stir, I would just get back in. And yes, it might take a bit longer to build up the time. However, when he starts to stir and you come back in, you'll probably find that he's more relaxed after a while and you can build up the time. I hope that makes sense. I'm not sure if I'm explaining myself very well, but if he's got to the point where he's pouring and pacing and panicking, then you've pushed him too far anyway. So you've gone over threshold, which is going to undermine your training, and you might find that behavior starts sooner, right? Yeah, because that's what happens when a dog's constantly going over threshold. that behavior will start sooner, or it could escalate and become worse. So you said it usually progresses to whining and barking. So it goes from pacing, pawing at the crate, pawing at the X-pen, then whining and barking. So don't let him get to the point where he's pacing. If you see him stir, come in, and then what you'll probably find is that pacing gets further and further out, and he's just growing as well. He's only a baby, so he's just getting older and older, and he'll be more able to be by himself. But especially with puppies, you want to build their confidence. So just a little analogy, which I like to use, is 30 to 60 minutes caress. Yeah, so that's a long time for a puppy. So an analogy I would like to use, I mean, that's good though, if that's how long it takes before he starts panicking, but I would suggest you're probably pushing it a little bit too far because he's got to the point where he's over threshold. So the analogy I really like is if you would, if anyone's been following me for a while, you've probably heard this, but if you've got a toddler, a child, and you want to teach them to swim, you're not going to take them by the hand and throw them in the deep end of the pool, because what is going to happen? They're going to panic. They're going to be, I can't get out, like total panic, and they'll probably never want to go near a body of water ever again. How would you teach that toddler? You would take them in the shallows. You would build their confidence, and you would make them feel safe in the water, and maybe you would get in there with them, etc., etc. But we're building confidence, but we're certainly not allowing them to be flooded, literally, by being over threshold. So with a puppy, we don't want to push them in the deep end. We want to make them feel safe and feel confident about being by themselves. And if they've got to the point where they're panicking, then they're not feeling confident. So yeah, I think it's still amazing for a 16-week-old puppy. I think you're doing an amazing job, but we just need to build up that time, as you know. But don't let them get to the point where they're panicking. So just come in, capture some good stuff. Don't get too stuck on the time. He's just a baby. That will increase, and it will get better and better for you, I think. So, alrighty. Well, that's the last of the questions. So I am going to put my book link. If you want to join the wait list, I'm going to put it here in the group chat. Because that's coming out soon. Oh, Carice says, after he went over threshold a couple of times, I realized, yeah, he wasn't quite ready. And you know what? One of the things I find when people are trying to do this training by themselves, I stay home now for all his alone time training to make sure you're nearby. Good one. You sound like you pretty genned up and know what you're doing, but yeah. So but just for everyone else, that's when you're trying to do this training by yourself, it's so easy to fall into the trap of, oh, well, he did 5 minutes or 10 minutes last time. Let's see how long I've got for the next time. And that's where you come a cropper, because the dog ends up, people wait to see the reaction, and that means they've gone over threshold, and that undermines your training. So there's the link to the book waiting list. And if anybody wants it, I'll put this in here too. It's just a free PDF on my website. Hopefully it's, which just gives you a checklist of, if my dog does this while I'm out, does it really mean it's separation anxiety, or could it be something else? So we talk about the context of the behavior. So I'll be back next week. So if you've got any questions, shoot me an email at hello@nessjones.com. Just make sure you put in the subject area that it's a question for the Q&A live, or you'll be able to comment in the Facebook group when I set it all up. So thank you for joining me. I hope it was helpful, and see you next week.